What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Joe Castro, aka Philly Fresco, and this is Philly the podcast. So today we have a very special guest, man. I'm actually very excited about this because my guy Jeremy Green, if you have not seen him on the ESPN radio on Sportsocracy, found him through YouTube. Right? You know how Eagles fans are. We see somebody talking about the Eagles, we have to jump in. But when he started talking, I just loved how he was talking about all sports, not just football. So I'm excited to kind of pick his mind about not only the draft that he did for the Eagles, but also just how he feels about this draft. But we have Jeremy Green. Jeremy, how's it going, man?
Hey, man, good to see you. Appreciate the kind words. We're just 9 days away from Draftmas. This is my Christmas, so I actually call it Draftmas. And this is to me, this is the greatest time of the year.
Definitely, I love that word, Draftmas. We're gonna go with that. So let's unwrap.
We had a Draftmas tree on our coverage last year. We actually brought in this. It was god awful, like lit up. It's supposed to sit in your yard Christmas tree, and we called it our Draftmas tree.
I actually love that. I love that. You got to get like the Charlie Brown peanuts, just the dilapidated tree for the draft. So let's unwrap this Draftmas present that we're about to have. Before I get into the actual mock draft that you did, I do want to just talk to you a little bit about this draft because, like I said, you're a wealth of knowledge, and I love it. So I want to know. First question I really have for you is if you were one of these GMs, right? If you were an NFL GM. With this draft, looking at the depth of players and, the high end and the low end of these players, are you a buyer or a seller in this draft? Would you rather move up in this draft, try and get top tier talent, or would you rather sell your pick and try and get more depth of picks for this draft or maybe even next year's draft?
I want out of the top 10, but I want as many picks between 25 and 125 as you will give me. I've said this about Seattle. I've said it about Atlanta. There are a lot of teams that should be looking to move down because they're just not the elite guy. Okay. And on my ESPN radio show, we talked about this the other day. This is one of the first drafts that we've gone into where one is just a mystery at this point. A lot of people say Aiden Hutchinson's the best player in the draft. And I really gristle at that. I don't think he's the best player in the draft. I think he's the safest high-end player in this draft. He's got the highest ceiling mixed with the highest floor. He's never going to be an all-pro in this league. I mean, he'll be a really good pass rusher. I've compared him to Trey Hendrickson of the Cincinnati Bengals. Trayvon Walker, that's who I think is going to go number one. I've said that for 2 months now. On my show, we're sponsored by a casino, and I told all of them, go to said casino, put a wager on Trayvon Walker at plus 2,200 to go number one. I've probably gotten 50 Twitter messages, emails, YouTube comments of, I got it at plus 2,200. They offered me plus 500 to just sell it off. And I wound up making 5 times my money just because I listened to that, because I started hearing the Trayvon Walker thing early. So to answer your question, I would want to move down. I think Philadelphia is in a great position with 15. And let's see, was it 15 and 18?
18, yes, sir.
I've laughed because they completely hoodooed the Saints because the Saints picked behind them, which is hilarious to me.
Yeah, I have no idea what they were trying to accomplish with that trade, but I'll take it 9 times out of 10. There were actually some Eagles fans that were upset about that trade, whether you want to believe that or not. That at all.
Shouldn't be. Here's the thought, and I can tell you the thought on both sides. For Philadelphia, they're looking at next year's quarterback class. And no matter what you think about Jalen Hurts, he's going to get one more year to really prove he's the guy. Next year, you've got 2 ones. You're going to be very malleable in the first round. If there's a guy you fall in love with, you can go get him. New Orleans is not looking at a quarterback. You hear the Kenny Pickett thing, all of these other rumors with New Orleans. There are 2 guys they're after. They want the best receiver they can get at 16. In the latest mock I did, it was Drake London. And at 19, they want Tyler Smith. They know there's not a team that's a risk to take him in front of them because they're in love with him, same way they were with Teron Armstead when he came out. So to me, that's one of those rare, it's a win-win. It was great for Philadelphia. I think it was good for New Orleans because they get their guy. One of the things we get lost in draft prep is, like a Tyler Smith. I don't love that guy. I think he's a beginning of the second-round pick. Some teams would play him at guard. But that's me looking at all 32 teams. New Orleans looks at him and goes, this is a left tackle for our system, and he'll be perfect, which means they have a higher value, which means what people like me think doesn't really matter to them. They care how he fits on this team. And there's the best teams in this league do that tremendously well, and New Orleans is one of them. Philadelphia does that really well as well. There's just one thing that and I've heard this a lot, that I don't understand with Philadelphia, and we'll get into that later, I'm sure.
But also that does kind of bring me into my next question, which is talking about draft need versus best player available. I know a lot of people love that term, best player available. And, I kind of personally, I feel like it's, I don't want to say a myth. I don't want to say that it's not, true at all, but I feel like there's a balance, right? You got to have best player available and draft need kind of together. And what you said was, you look at the guy best for your team. How much do you think that's going to come into play, especially not having those top tier guys that you're just like, it's a no brainer? Do you think more teams are going to be looking at need outside of just best player available this year?
Well, you have to weigh need. There's a myth, and I've got several really good friends in the NFL that have basically told me when I first started doing this, I had a great myth of how draft boards are done. So the board is done by the grade from the scouts. So everybody comes together. You have certain grades on certain players. You don't have 32 first-round grades. Just because there's 32 first-round picks does not mean there's 32 first-round players. So and I'll use Philadelphia, for example. If they get to 15 and they have 21 first-round grades, there's only 6 guys probably on the board for them, and then it becomes weighing it out. What could I get at 18? If I take, say, Jordan Davis here with the fall of Devontae Wyatt, I can't take him at 18 anymore. The character concerns have come up. So if I want a defensive tackle, I have to take him. Now, look at, say, linebacker, a position that I think is a need, and Howie Roseman absolutely refuses to use high-end draft capital on. At 15, if Devin Lloyd and Nakobe Dean are both on the board, then you've got similar grades. And I know I can take Jordan Davis here, and there's no risk of me winding up with, the Oliver Twist thing with my cup out, just hoping somebody will give me something. So you take the guy you prioritize the position based on the board. That falls into the team need thing of, yes, if you have a huge hole, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have a huge hole at left guard right now. So Zion Johnson, ideal. If he's not there, get out, because there's nobody else that's going to fill that. That's why the Jimmy Johnson trade board is kind of comical to me, because it's situational. So you look at Philadelphia, they had 3 picks. They were totally fine making 3 picks. New Orleans comes to them with a Godfather offer for 16 because they need a receiver, and they had figured out there's not going to be one there at 19. Yeah. There's no shot that one will be there at 19. We will end up, the Chargers will get us, or somebody else will get us, and we're not going to get who we want. So they overpay according to the draft value chart because there is a need, but there's a need that's filled by a player that fits that spot on their board, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that when this starts to, I think Jacksonville kind of holds the keys to this whole draft, because we don't know, like you said, that's the most unpredictable draft pick right now. So depending on what,
it's also the most unpredictable team.
It really is.
The Jacksonville Jaguars are owned by a carnival barker that owns a pro wrestling organization and looks like a villain from Mario. You could tell me they took a kicker at one, and I would go, yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds like something Jacksonville would do.
He's hilarious. I used to live in Jackson, just a little random story. I used to live in Jacksonville for like 6-7 years. And, it was through the Blake Bortles days and everything like that. That team is literally like, it feels like a college team, because the way that they partied with the city, the way that they were everywhere, the swimming pool in the state. Jacksonville is a very, like you said, unpredictable franchise in its best. So, once they make their pick, it's definitely going to kind of tell teams what they can do. But 2 more questions I want to ask before we do get into your actual mock draft is kind of related to each other. I want to know, do you think there's any guys that you have in this draft process, that are kind of underrated right now? And on the other end of that, is there anybody that you're looking at, like, I don't know why you guys are falling in love with him right now?
To me, there are a lot of guys that are, I'm going to say they're disrespected. Drake London. I have long said Drake London's been the number one receiver in this class to me for as long as I can remember. That's not going to change. He doesn't run fast enough. I don't care. He's 6'5", and he's built like Mike Evans. I think that's his projection in this league. And some smart team is going to sit there and he'll fall in their laps. I know there's been talk of Atlanta at 8. I think Atlanta's on Jermaine Johnson. Jermaine Johnson's been a late riser in this process. He would have been an answer to this probably 2 weeks ago. But now I think his drop dead is the Jets at 10 because I really like him. But it's specific.
Yeah.
And that's where questions like that get fun for somebody like me. So a team that runs 3-4, Jermaine Johnson's a second-round pick. Now you look at the Jets who run that wide 9 or the Falcons that just need a pass rusher. We're still trying to figure out exactly what we are. Dean Pease, their defensive coordinator, is a very multiple guy. I just need the best player. That's where that gets to be a little interesting. Another guy that I think is just painfully underrated in this process is Devin Lloyd, the linebacker out of Utah. I mean, he's a missile as a blitzer. And people worry about, he's got limitations in coverage. How many linebackers do you know that are really good blitzers and really good tacklers that don't have limitations in coverage? That's the narrative on all of them. It's almost like we want him to be a unicorn to take an off-ball linebacker in the top 20, and he's not, so we hold that against him. And I feel the same way about Nakobe Dean. To me, the fact he's so short really hurts. But then you get into, okay, well, I mean, there have been short linebackers that were really good in this league, and then the value becomes too much for you to deal with. I mean, there's teams now that think Nakobe Dean's going to go in the second round. That's insane to me. Now you get into overrated. Virtually everybody at the top of this draft. I think Aiden Hutchinson is overrated. I look at Evan Neal, the lineman out of Alabama. I think he's a very safe floor, but his ceiling terrifies me. And it also terrifies me that he could be 400 pounds by the time this is all said and done. I mean, he's 360 at perfect weight. And then you look at guys like that and his weight fluctuates. You watch the tape over time at Alabama, and there were times he looked drastically heavier. And that's weird. That's one of those things that I've made kind of a reputation for evaluating this part of the draft process. And I want you to think about this because it sounds really common sense when I say it this way, but nobody ever thinks of it. So you spend 5 months in college football, workouts every day, high-end competition. That's a lot of working out, right? So if a guy gains weight through that, what does that tell you? He's eating really poorly. It means his nutrition program's not where it should be because he's working out hardcore day in, day out. So what's going to happen when he gets to the league? And you have minicamp in May, and then we don't see you again until the end of July. So you got 2 months here where I'm not going to say you're sedentary, but you're working out on your own. So your level of competition and physicality and things like that are going to dwindle. What's going to happen then? You're gaining weight working out 5 times a week. What's going to happen when you're left to your own devices? And I've been right about a couple of those guys over the years that Terrence Cody was the first one. Terrence Cody, I could never understand how a man would gain 30 pounds through the season. Then he got into the NFL and he came back to Baltimore. And he was over 400 pounds after his first layoff in his second year. And then he started fighting dogs and doing other things that are not very intelligent. And he wound up out of the league.
Yeah, I never did think of that. And even especially with Evan Neal, you're looking at the school you were at. I mean, that's a premier, if you have nutritionists at any school, it's probably going to be Alabama. You probably got a lot of smart minds there that can tell you how to not gain that weight. So that is very true. To see you do that, it kind of gets a little bit worrisome that maybe you don't have that self-discipline. That's a very good point. I never thought of that. That is a very good point.
It's funny. I have people tell me that all the time. And I never really thought of it. As I was coming up through I was never athletic enough. I knew my path into NFL things was not going to be with a helmet on. It was going to be talking and evaluating. So I started watching tape when I was 14 years old. That was my path to getting where I wanted to get to. And so I've noticed things over the years. There's no rhyme nor reason to, hey, ABC happened, which means this guy's a bust. But there are little factors like that. You can't keep your weight in check in that high level of competition. Or there are a lot of red flags about you're off the field. I'll give you a perfect example. Kayvon Thibodeau. This is another little theory I've long had. Thibodeau really wanted to tell people about his NIL deals. He was making over $500,000 in NIL deals as an edge rusher at Oregon. He also said he chose Oregon over Alabama because he wanted to play for the greatest entity in pro sports. He wasn't talking about Oregon. He was talking about Nike. So you're taking a small amount of money that is just completely monopolizing this guy's brain. What's going to happen when you hand him $10 million guaranteed? That's the huge fear with Kayvon Thibodeau. When you give him that much money, what's he going to do with it? Is he going to be committed to keeping his body right? Or is he going to be about his brand? I'm not telling you steadfast that's going to happen. That's what teams are worried about with Kayvon Thibodeau.
That's a really good. I didn't think of that. Do you think these NIL deals are going to kind of start to have that as a red flag? Is that going to be something that we're talking about more often in these drafts coming on? Now that these guys can go out there and get their own money, is this going to kind of be a part of the mental evaluation we do on these prospects, you think?
So I'll tell you, I can tell you my personal experience. So a lot of people don't know this, but we actually had an NIL deal last year with 3 college football players that are in this draft. It went through Ingles Supermarkets, who is our biggest sponsor, and they're wonderful. It was a good experience. It's a lot of feeling out process. I'm not going to lie, because there's a lot of, hey, we don't know. Hey, we don't know. We'll figure it out. So I think they're going to develop and be more streamlined. But we had Sam Howell, the quarterback at North Carolina, Justin Ross, the receiver at Clemson, and George Pickens, the receiver at Georgia. All these guys were phenomenal. Couldn't have been better. I love the character on all 3. And as somebody that watched my mock draft, you probably heard all 3 of those names, and all 3 of them went higher than you probably thought. Am I right or am I wrong?
Yeah, maybe not George Pickens. I think George Pickens maybe even – we'll get into that, but yeah, for the most part, yeah, definitely. I definitely think.
So part of that evaluation is that I worked hands-on with these guys, and I've got to know the personality, and they're all 3 flawless. All 3 of them are as good as you could possibly expect from a 21, 22-year-old kid. And so I look at that and go, all right, I know the skill is there. Justin Ross would have been a top 10 pick had it not been for the neck injury. George Pickens, had it not been for the knee injury, I think he would be a no doubt 1 this year. And if Sam Howell hadn't lost all of his receivers, I think he's the number 1 quarterback in this draft. And I look at that, and I've got a hands-on of the personality. So I feel like I know those 3 guys backwards and forwards. And I look at that, and I do think there will be an involvement. I just don't necessarily think it's what everybody thinks. I think there will be more teams that call people like us that have had this association. And I'm going to tell you, I learned that from firsthand experience, that what were they like to work with? And I had nothing but glowing things to say. And so I do think there is an involvement there. But the NIL deal thing, I didn't love it when it came out. Then I just learned it's part of the process. It's where we are, and embrace it. And now I've completely come around, and I think it's fantastic. And I'm looking forward to doing more in the future.
That is pretty cool. Well, if Howie calls you, give me a text. Let me know. We're going to take George Pickens or something in the first.
I would be remiss if I didn't point this out, just solely because I say this on every one of these shows I do. I am one of the weirder humans that you will ever meet in your life. And, we've got the ESPN show, all of the things. I've been a comedian. I've been a postal worker. I have been an executive for 2 multinational corporations that now work for ESPN Radio. So I have one of the weirdest career trajectories you've ever seen. If a team called me today and said, we want you to be an area scout for us, my wife literally already has a go bag packed ready to book it, because there's nothing that would excite me more. It's just some small region, and this is mine, and I live in college football stadiums. That, to me, that's a dream job. A lot of people talk about I have a dream job, and I do. But if a team called and said, hey, we want to give you a job as an area scout in Alaska,
all the way in. That's awesome. Yeah,
they have 8 prospects that are for the next 20 years, and you're going to know them backwards and forwards.
I will say that's one thing that really caught me onto your show, is that, like, you obviously the Eagles, you're talking Eagles. It was fun to kind of go back and forth in the comments with you, but like, when you started talking about golf, when you started talking about this, I'm just like, oh, this guy just knows sports backwards and forwards. It's awesome. It was a lot of fun. I like people that bring value, that you leave and you're like, I didn't know that. I'm glad I know that now. So that's one thing I really did love about your show. But
I appreciate that. I'll tell you, just since you said that way, I'll tell you a funny story. So obviously the NFL draft is my bread and butter. I do the NBA draft as well. I'm real big on draft things. I don't do baseball because baseball is just completely irrelevant to me. But in high school, I actually played against Steph Curry. And that's in our intro that I once scored 6 points on Steph Curry. Now, the part we leave out is that he scored 34 on me, and they beat us 100-12.
Wow! So you were half of your
him in a
team's
3-point
points.
shootout one time, though.
That you were half of your team's points. I mean,
well, we only crossed half court like 6 times. So here's the thing: their basket defense not great. And me, little 15-year-old me, the card carrying captain of the team, gets mine. I think I shot 5 threes in that game. I just so happened to hit 2 of them.
There we go. Hey, it's how you say it. It's not necessarily what happened. It's how you report it. So,
100%.
To me, you scored half of your team's points against Stephen Curry. That's impressive to me. Sure.
He's a great guy too, by the way.
Yeah, I'm sure he is. He seems like a nice dude. So I want to get into this draft before I do let you go. I don't want to go over every single pick, but I do want to kind of go over some of the main picks that I really, really like. Obviously, in the first round, you went ahead and picked 2 of our picks, Derek Stingley and Devin Lloyd. I love the Derek Stingley pick. We'll see if he is there, but I want to key in on the Devin Lloyd pick real quick. Like you said, he is, to me, I also agree, he's one of my favorite guys in this draft. But Philadelphia fans are jaded, right? We know that since I think it's like 1980 something, we have not picked a first round linebacker. This would be breaking history. This would be, a historical pick in terms of how long it's been. What do you think Devin Lloyd is, and why do you think Devin Lloyd is the pick for the Philadelphia Eagles?
So first, and I'm just going to touch on the Stingley pick since you said that. As of when I did that mock, that seemed more likely. I thought Philadelphia was the drop dead spot on Stingley, excuse me. Now it looks like Minnesota's kind of falling in love with him. I'm not sure he will be there, but I still maintain that is the drop dead spot. Now, the stat on Lloyd, here's what you have to understand. So if you look at Howie Roseman's draft record, he really prioritizes pass rush. So Devin Lloyd he's kind of a mutant when it comes to linebacker because he's not really an off-ball linebacker. I mean, yes, that's a position he plays, but he's a blitzing piece. He's hyper athletic. I know he didn't run as well at the combine as you would expect. I could go on about the combine for 4 full hours and never take a breath of how people overvalue that. So I do understand that they have never prioritized that position, but where I think a lot of people fell victim to that is you got to understand this kid is not just an off-ball linebacker. He's one of the best blitzing linebackers I've ever seen. And so you mix that with positional needs. You mix that with the players they've talked to. You mix that with the depth of this draft. Because I think anybody knows that Philadelphia is going to need to come away from the early parts of this draft with a linebacker. Then you get into what would be available later. And yes, I know they like Brandon Smith, the kid out of Penn State, and that's possible. I just look at it and go, if you were going to prioritize linebacker and you were going to make that a priority, Devin Lloyd fits the mindset of a Howie Roseman better than like Nakobe Dean. Nakobe Dean's more of a do everything. The fact he's short would be kind of a deal breaker to some teams. And so that's why I don't think he's in play for Philadelphia at all. But then you bring in Lloyd, who does that one thing that they really prioritize, and that makes it make far more sense.
Definitely. Yeah, and I love Devin Lloyd. Devin Lloyd is one of those guys that, Eagles fans would love, love, love to get a linebacker in this draft. Last year, I was pounding the table for Micah Parsons when we were at 6. I said he was worth it at 6. I stick to that. It is what it is. Obviously, he went to the hated rival, so now I have to deal with that. But I love the Devin Lloyd pick. In the second round, you went ahead and took a wide receiver, which I also love because a lot of Eagles fans and a lot of people mocking for the Eagles pick a wide receiver in the first round. I just think that this defense, to be blunt, I just think this defense is so bad and so old where you are good that you have to prioritize this defense. So I'm glad you did. But you were able to take your guy, George Pickens, who obviously I didn't know before you just told me that you were able to, work with him, get to know him. Knowing that, what type of player would the Eagles and Philadelphia be getting, to Philadelphia? Because Eagles fans, we're very hands-on when people come to Philly. So what can we kind of expect if George Pickens is to be the pick for Philly?
Pickens is he's a freak of nature. He's big-bodied. And one of the things you got to understand in this draft is that X and Y receivers are going to be prioritized because you've got so many players that their best-case scenario is playing in the slot. That's one thing that has happened. I mean, I've been doing the draft now. This is my 11th year doing the draft. This is my 3rd year doing it with my own branding and my own stuff. I was a ghostwriter. I've done a lot of things around the NFL draft. One of the things that's changed is now about 75% of the receivers that come into the draft, their best case scenario is playing in the slot. So you look at somebody like Pickens that is big bodied, that is fast enough, ran in the 4.4s at the combine, which I'll be honest with you, he ran faster than I thought he would. If it wasn't for the bulky knee, I would know he's a first round pick because I've seen enough raw. He's killed the combine process, the pre-draft process. But I think there's some teams that are still going to look at that knee and go, that scares me. Because if it were to happen again, when I first started doing radio, this is a name that should be familiar to you as an Eagles fan. My first co-host was Nay Brown, former Philadelphia Eagle, and great friend, former North Carolina Tar Heel as well. And one of the things that he taught me to really pay attention to is teams, they can take one injury in a vacuum and say it is what it is. And now there has been a lot of development in medical science and things like that. When you get into the second one, there are a lot of teams that go, nope, out. And I think that's where, because Pickens had an injury in high school as well. Now, do I think that's accurate? No, I don't. I mean, I've seen him run very up close, and he looks fantastic. I think he will be a great player in this league. He would fit Philadelphia tremendously. And to what you said about a lot of mock drafters putting a receiver with Philadelphia in the first round, here's where that doesn't make sense to me. It's something that people get lost when they do mock drafts. You take what you see. All right, so you don't love Jalen Reagor, and I totally understand why you don't. But you got to look at how Howie views him, not you.
What's going on, you guys? Today's show is sponsored by our friends over at BetUs.com. BetUs is offering 125% deposit matching up to $2,500. So sign up now and use code JOIN125. BetUs has decades of online betting experience and millions of satisfied customers. So place your wagers on BetUs.com, get your deposit matched, and don't forget Philly Fresco when you're rolling in that dough. Link is in the description, and thank you so much to BetUs for your continued support. Now let's get back into it.
Because it's not you making the pick, it's Howie. So Howie is going to try to do everything in his power to make that pick make some sort of sense, or it's going to be a big stain on his draft record forever. Yeah. So look at who they brought in, Zach Pascal. All right, so Pascal he's a possession slot from Indianapolis. Rager's best position is in the slot. Well, where you pick at 15 and 18, virtually all of those receivers are going to be best coming out of the slot. So you're going to have all of these guys whose best position is shoehorned into one spot on the field. That doesn't make sense. So then you go down the line and look at a guy like a George Pickens, or you look at a guy like an Alec Pierce out of Cincinnati that I think you could get. He's more of a third-round pick to me. Height, weight, speed, production's not necessarily there. But he plays that XY position. He helps you as a blocker in the run game. The tape doesn't really bear that out, but I think he can do it as a stalk blocker in the NFL. And now you look at things that help you across the board, not just shoehorning a piece in because, I don't like our receivers, so we have to get a receiver in here. You get a guy that helps you across the board, a guy that helps Jalen Hurts, gives you a big-bodied target. Look at your targets. You don't have that big-bodied, wide-angled receiver. I think ideally Drake London falls right in your lap. And that would be the guy that you're receiver in the first round that you're actually excited about, because that's that big-bodied win at the point of attack receiver that could benefit Jalen Hurts, not just a receiver for receiver's sake.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. And we talked about it prior to the show that Eagles fans sometimes get all up in arms and just want the prettiest pick. I think that that's a perfect way to explain it. You got to look at what we have and what's available. And like I said, I love those picks. And then we move on to the third round. You take D'Angelo Malone, who I'm very high on. Brandon Smith, obviously, we talked about. He also did meet with the Philadelphia Eagles already, so that's awesome. But I do want to kind of stick to the fourth round pick. All right, and I know you knew this was going to come. You went ahead and took a punter. I will say I had Aaron Sippus, our current punter, on the show, so it hurts my heart to be having to say that it makes sense that we're looking at a punter. But Matt Ariza is a guy that I feel like is, can I say a punter's polarizing? Can I say a punter is kind of just in all these talks? Can you tell me about what you see Matt Ariza and why the fourth round?
Well, I mean, there's a reason they call the kid the punt god, because he's the greatest punter I've ever evaluated. And as a West Virginia guy, it hurts me to say that because Pat Mack is certainly on the high side of that list. But Ariza is there are very few punters that you look at and go, that's guy's a 15-year player in the league. And there's virtually nothing that's going to change that. Just because of his process, the replicability of his motion, there's nothing there. You got to, looking at punters is a lot like looking at pitchers in baseball. The process can get messed up as you age. Mason Crosby with the Green Bay Packers. The problem for him, he didn't all of a sudden become bad. His process, his kicking process, has not aged well. And so now as he's gotten older, he can't do the same things at 36, 37 years old that he did at 22. So that's one thing you have to look at with a punter. Presley Harvin last year that went to the Pittsburgh Steelers, I looked at him and said, this kid's not in the greatest shape, and he's that good. Big booming leg, didn't have a great rookie year, and often rookie punters don't. But Matt Ariza is a kid that I'm telling you right now, he's going to go higher than people think. I have been specifically told the LA Rams are not going to let him go by them more than once because they look at their team and go, we're so set at all these positions. We need a guy that can turn the field, because just think about how that changes everything. We can pin you deep so we can play good defense. We can grind you out. We can run you out. And then Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford and Odell Beckham Jr. and Allen Robinson get the ball in short on a short side of the field. That changes everything. So if you look at Philadelphia, you've got a quarterback that, let's be honest, arm talent is limited. I don't think – I'm not slighting Jalen Hurts there. He's been a much better player than I thought he would be. But your path to being good is playing good defense, running the ball really well, and putting Jalen Hurts in a position to succeed where he throws it 25, 30 times a game as opposed to the 40, 45 of Dak Prescott or somebody like that. And then you look around the division and go, okay, well, I've got Dak that I feel is overpaid. I've got Daniel Jones that couldn't play dead in a Western. And then I've got Carson Wentz, whose entire body is made of glass and popsicle sticks. This is a very winnable division if you're Philadelphia. You just got to have the things that round it into form. And I look at a Matt Ariza and go, I'm going to control field position all the time. And that is to me, that is worth a fourth round pick.
I respect that. I like that. And to kind of piggyback off that, the Eagles, from 2015-ish to like 2017, maybe even a little bit earlier, through those Dave Phipp years, we had one of the best special teams units. Now, especially last year was rough, especially on that special teams side. So I think punter is definitely a need. I think a punt returner is definitely a need as well. So that's a great pick. I like that. And I think a lot of people have talked about Matt Ariza, but I like how you put that in perspective. And I'm excited to see what he'll do in the league. Like I said, I don't want to go over every single pick because I do want guys to go watch how you explained it on your show and everything. I'm going to leave the link in the bio so that they can go see that. But I do want to talk about one last player. And God forbid I even get close to pronouncing this right, but it's the tight end. I can't Chigo
Chigozie Okonkwo. I'll make it much simpler for you. He goes by Chig.
Okay, Chig. So we got Chig, the tight end. The Eagles do need a tight end. The Eagles definitely need a tight end. We do have Tyree Jackson. Got hurt again. He's somebody I know that they want to maybe get at that second, third spot. We got Jack Stoll last year, who we've also had on the show. He had a decent rookie year. But what do you see in Chig that fits the Philadelphia Eagles or fits the NFL in general?
So one thing that I absolutely hate in the pre-draft process is comps. I hate when they compare a draft eligible player to a player that has played in the league, because they're lazy. And I'm just going to say this as clearly as I can. Invariably, the comps are either a player that stature-wise looks like the guy they're comparing him to, or it's a guy that went to the same school, or it's a guy that projects to fit with the same kind of team. Now, that being said, one of the few players that I look at and go, I have a perfect comp for you, is Chig Okonkwo, because his comp is Jonnu Smith. Move tight end. He's way more athlete right now than he is football player. So yes, when whoever selects him, the commissioner comes to the podium or they announce it off that weird little table, they will say, Chig Okonkwo, tight end, Maryland. He's really more of an athlete. We talk about that more from kids coming to high school to college than we do college to the NFL. He's very much an athlete because depending on the system, I think he can play some H-back. I think he's the move tight end. I think you can put him in the slot. And you've seen it in the pre-draft process. And there's another guy that I know Philadelphia at least has kicked the tires on, named Jelani Woods. He's a tight end from Virginia. These are just different pieces. So you already look at Dallas Goedert and go, okay, we're good with one. In this system, you need two.
Yeah.
And you think back to the good days of Zach Ertz and what he did. You don't have to shoehorn the player into that same scheme fit. You need a player that can do something that's different than what Dallas Goedert does. So to me, you bring in somebody like Okonkwo that I can line up in the backfield. I can do all kinds of things. I might have to generate his touches, but really think about it. Look at the San Francisco model. Deebo Samuel is not a great route runner. He's not. He's a good player. He's a good yak player. So you get the ball in his hand and good things happen. And there are a lot of those guys in this draft. We never look at that with tight ends. That's just, it's like a forgotten piece of the NFL. And I think Okonkwo is going to be one of the first. Jonnu Smith did it, then got the money from New England, and they don't know how to use him. Sorry, as a Jets fan, I have to take shots at New England where I can, because over the last 20 years, I haven't had a lot of opportunities to. So to me, he's just a move piece that I bring him in, and yeah, I'm going to have to generate his touches early, but he's such a good athlete, and he's such a good kid. The story and my big board is coming out between now and the draft. So I'll have a 2 to 3 minute video on every player that's on my big board. I do 500 players a year. I put 300 on the big board of what my board would look like. I also do I swear I'm not trying to do shameless self-promotion here.
Oh, you're good.
It led into it. So something that I tried to do last year and I'm going to do this year is I'm going to take a 33rd team. All right, so I'm going to make a team from the shell of other NFL teams, and I'm going to pull off players that I don't think other practice squad guys, players that other teams don't necessarily appreciate, and I'm going to put them on a team, and I'm just going to have it set on our website. And I think over time you'll see that some of these guys wind up on other teams, or injuries happen, and they become popular, they become productive. Last year, Amon-Ra St. Brown would have been my second round pick. Because I was incredibly high on him. And it's just, if for nothing else, it's something for me to go, hey, this is what I would have done had I been the GM. And I've never seen anybody do that. So
yeah, that's a cool idea.
Well, look, my mother hugged me too much and my father didn't hug me enough. So I'm a reasonably creative, artistic kind of guy.
That's how you gotta be. I love it.
But it's going back to where this started. The story with him is fantastic, and you find out the lack of depth in his career and how raw the player is. And I just look at how he fits with Philadelphia, and I think he would be a tremendous pick. Middle of the draft. I can't remember exactly what pick he went to Philadelphia with, but it was, I think, somewhere right there in that 4th round range.
I think it was 5th round. Yeah, our first 4th, 5th.
I knew it was somewhere in there. I don't have it pulled up in front of me.
Yeah, and especially with as many picks as we have, you can kind of take flyers, right? You can kind of take guys that, like you said, maybe you have to mold them a little bit, but you can definitely get something out of them. A Gene Delance at the end, I think, is kind of the perfect explanation of that. Somebody that you were kind of saying is very raw. We'll close it up on that. How do you feel about him and going to Philadelphia?
So Jean Delance is one of the players in this draft that I think every team in the draft has at some point talked to. And the reason is what I said earlier about this league is getting smaller, it's getting faster, it's getting quicker. John DeLance does not have stereotypical offensive tackle size. He's 6'4". He's listed at 295, and I'm going to be honest with you, there were times I think he played sub 280. So in the beginning, he would be a swing tackle. I look at the way Philadelphia plays, what I value to be their best path to being good, which is running the ball with Miles Sanders, those generated touches for Jalen Hurts. You're going to need a swing tackle kind of guy. And DeLance is somebody that they've been hot and heavy on. He's going to have to – you're going to have to really work with him. And do yourself a favor, do not watch the Florida State tape. Just avoid that at all costs because it will make you want to put forks in your eyes and because it was horrid. Jermaine Johnson ate him alive.
Oof.
But at this late point in the draft, you're looking for raw. You're looking for moldable. You want to use those 6th, 7th round picks because I'm going to be honest with you, the grade of a 6th round pick and a priority undrafted free agent, you're talking about a difference of 3 or 4 tenths of a point. So the guys that you procure are the guys that are, you're going to fit in my system, you're going to be developmental, and I'm not going to tap out on you. The difference between a guy you take in the 6th and an undrafted free agent is I know you're raw. I have very little intention of you doing much of anything with for the first year, sometimes even the second year, but I want you in my system. I think I can develop you. If I'm right, I'm right. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. The Rams have done a great job of that. If you look at the roster from the Super Bowl, they had 7 high-end contributors that were 5th, 6th, 7th round picks that they were just keeping them away from other teams. Does it necessarily line up on the board of this guy's the 185th best player in the draft? No. But you think he has a higher ceiling and he fits in your system better. And that's where I think John DeLance falls in with Philadelphia.
Awesome. Yeah, he could be our next Jordan Mailata. We have one of those on our team too. So
absolutely. And I'll be honest with you, they did the same thing with Mailata. He was not really thought of to be starting caliber. They brought him in, they worked with him, he fit in the system, and now he's your left tackle.
Yeah, and we have one of the best offensive linemen, our coach in the game, in my opinion. Stoutland is no joke. He's gotten the best out of a lot of players. So I love
and that's why I look at, I mean, John, as of the last time I checked, I basically have a spreadsheet that tells me every player in the draft and who has contacted them to my knowledge. John DeLance has been contacted by 26 of the 32 teams in the league. So there are a lot of, that tells me this kid's going to get drafted. Somebody's going to go, you know what? I'm willing to give up the capital to bring him into my system. And I look at somebody like Philadelphia, Cincinnati, teams that have really good offensive line coaches. That's where I want to see him go. My fear is that he gets shoehorned into a team. Hey, you hate the Cowboys and you hate the Washington Commanders. Teams like that, where it is very specific. I'm going to mold you into exactly what I want. Your talent be damned. Philadelphia is more open to, well, let's take the raw and see how we can use this. Cincinnati's the same way. Basically, anybody under the Kyle Shanahan tree, they look at a guy and go, okay, you came in the league as a tackle, but you could end up being a guard. You could end up being anything on the offensive line. We're going to take the talent and we're going to mold the system to you instead of trying to mold you to the system.
I love it. Yeah, well, that was Jeremy Green's perfect mock draft for the Philadelphia Eagles. Like I said, I didn't go over every single pick. I am going to have the link to the video that he did for this mock draft. I want you to definitely watch it because I think it was like 20 plus minutes of you just breaking down these guys, and it was some great work. There's not many changes I would personally make, but Jeremy, I appreciate your time so much. I know I kind of held you a little bit longer than I said I would, but this was a lot of fun.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, we definitely got to do this again, man. I had a lot of fun. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Definitely. But I appreciate everybody tuned in. If you are on Twitch or if you're a YouTube member, you get to watch this early. So lucky you. But other than that, y'all know what it is, man. We are about to get out of here. It is Fly Eagles Fly. And we are out here. Peace.
Eagles fans everywhere. This is for you.
Fly Eagles Fly. Touchdown. Time to get Jalen.